Good morning, everyone. It's 10:30, and I wanted to begin before we officially call to order, just with a few comments. But the first agenda item is the call to order, and the time is currently 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, January 26th, 2021, and we do have a quorum. Happy New Year to everyone on the call. And obviously, we have had a very interesting few weeks. We've witnessed a peaceful transition of federal government, of which we are all relieved. And we enter 2021 with hopefully some visibility as to how the coronavirus will unfold. We are making dramatic progress in the state in issuing vaccines, and we've seen, thankfully, our numbers decrease both in hospitalization and occurrence. We still have a lot of road ahead of us before we can safely emerge from this pandemic. But I want to also reach out and personally thank everyone in our industry who has continued to rally together, especially those in the restaurant and bar industry who have suffered so materially from this. I was recently speaking with some restaurateurs and comparing what we have in Texas versus other states such as California, which have refused to open, despite the overwhelming numbers that prove that in Texas and in California that the advantages of locking down are not present and certainly not scientific. But we recognize that we've done all we can, and I would like to thank and acknowledge the thousands of restaurant owners that have done it right, that have complied with the government standards, that have kept their social distancing, their masking rules, their attendance rules in compliance with the emergency order. I'd also like to thank the bars that reclassified through food and beverage who are doing it right and properly and safely, which to me enforces the notion that when it is controlled and we have allowed restaurants to participate willingly, that this is far better than a lockdown system in which people have to run to private gatherings where it seems that so much of the occurrences take place. So thank you very much for the restaurants and the bars that have been so in compliant. Now, obviously, there have been some that haven't, and those have made some of the press lately. And we, as well as local police departments and law enforcement officials, have been working diligently to ensure that those restaurants and bars that are out of compliance and continue to operate outside the law are properly dealt with, and in many cases have been shut down. So again, thank you to those in our industry who have been so cooperative. Thank you to the governor for allowing the state to stay open so that the thousands of jobs, at least we can keep and hopefully work toward a solution. My last comment today has to do with January being National Human Trafficking Month. And we've obviously not spent as much time in these commission meetings during the pandemic in discussing this heinous crime. But I just want to reemphasize to everyone listening that human trafficking is still an enormous priority for this agency, and that human trafficking still occurs in several of the areas that we control or that we have jurisdiction over. And so we must remain vigilant as this crime is a blight on humanity and specifically targets the underprivileged and the underage, and often hiding in plain sight. So to all of our brave agents, men and women who work in our special investigation units, as well as our enforcement division, as well as everyone else throughout the agency in all of our varying capacities, who work every day to try to make Texas a safer place, a more responsible place. And so we are so grateful for all of you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now approve, most important. Now let us recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next agenda item is approval of the commission meeting minutes, November 17th and December 15th. I so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Moreno. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
All have voted. Minutes are approved as written. Our votes have been recorded. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The next agenda item is audit sales affidavit report with Deputy Director Bowman.
Good morning, Commissioner, Chairman Lilly, and Commissioners. For the record, I am Gene Bowman, Deputy Director of the Audit and Investigations Division. Today's presentation will provide a brief statistical overview of the agency's administrative activities related to 1, the enforcement of current COVID guidelines, 2, the agency's efforts in assisting the industry in staying open under these guidelines, and 3, ensuring the safety of the citizens of the state of Texas. First slide, please. Section 104.06 of the Alcoholic Beverage Code requires the Commission to monitor on-premise accounts for compliance with 51% alcohol sales. This percentage determines if the location needs to post a red, no weapon sign, or a blue weapon sign, which allows licensed gun holders to enter the location. This review is primarily conducted by our licensing division when reviewing original and renewal applications. Section 411.204 of the Government Code requires on-premise permit or license holder to post a red weapon sign if TABC determines 51% or more of the gross receipts for the location are from the sale of alcohol. Sections 11.041 and 61.11 of the AB Code requires permit license holders not required to post a red weapon sign to post the blue weapon sign. Permit license holders eligible to hold a food and beverage certificate may also post a blue weapon sign. With the advent of COVID, many bars that would normally post the red weapon sign and not be able to open choose to make their business model or change their business model from a bar to a restaurant operation. 2 methods exist to make this change. The first is the bar has existing food sales already in place, and combined with other non-alcohol sales, makes alcohol sales less than 51% of the total gross receipts, and confirms this to the TABC by filing what we call a 51% sales affidavit for our approval. Or 2, the location converts from a bar to a restaurant business model, begins selling food, and applies for a food and beverage certificate. This allows the location to project alcohol sales to be less than 51% for the coming 12-month period. Under option 1, as of 1/21/21, audit has processed 913 of the 51% sales affidavits. 667 were approved, 134 were disapproved, 107 were withdrawn, and 5 were pending review at the time. It should be noted that there was a dramatic drop in affidavits received by the agency after the implementation of counties reopening bars on the Governor's Order GA 32. Under option 2, as of 1/21/21, the license division has received a total of 2,931 food and beverage applications and approved 2,908 of those. If you add those 2 numbers together, the ones approved FBs and the ones filing 51% affidavit approvals, we basically have allowed 3,575 locations to open that otherwise would be considered bars and not able to open. In October, next slide, please, I'm sorry. In October, GA 32 provided a method for bars to open provided the county judge of the respective county filed an official request with the agency, and the county qualified under the Department of State Health Services covert guidelines. For the first several weeks after the passage or the implementation of GA 32, the agency was inundated with requests to approve counties to open bars. Counties were being approved and opened on a daily basis. As we moved into the holiday season, Thanksgiving through New Year's, the trend reversed with COVID hospitalizations rising, causing the Department of Health, State Health Services to close multiple trauma service areas. There are 22 trauma service areas within the state, with each TSA consisting of multiple counties. So a decision to close a TSA can result in bar closures in multiple counties. From October the 27th, 2020 to present, we went from 144 counties open for bars to our current state of 45 open counties, 5 of which were recertified after being forced to close previously. Next slide, please. This is a visual timeline graph reflecting how the holiday season affected bar closures. The blue line represents counties that have not opted in to have bars open. The orange line represents counties that opt in or have been recertified. And the gray line represents counties that have been decertified, causing bars to close within the respective counties. Note that at the beginning of GA 32, there was an influx of counties opting in to open bars. As we moved into the holiday season, the trend reversed with counties being decertified, and currently that trend has not leveled off. Next slide, please. These comparison maps reflect how we have transgressed from a state that at one point had 153 counties open for bars to a state with 45 counties open to bars. And the map changes weekly, sometimes daily. Currently, there are 94 counties that have not elected to opt in out of the 254 counties in the state. Commissioners, that concludes my presentation unless you have questions. I hope this presentation has provided you with a better understanding of the agency's administrative covert activities in trying to keep the industry open, but at the same time, keeping the citizens of the state of Texas safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bowman. Do we have any comments or questions from our commissioners?
No, thank you, Director.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is Special Investigations Unit operational success with Major Wall. And in light of this being Human Trafficking Month, we are looking forward, Major, to hearing your discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Lilly. Commissioners, good morning. I'm proud to update you on operational successes across the state with respect to human trafficking investigations, organized crime, and drug trafficking. First slide, please. So in October, I'd like to highlight 2 cases. One case was in the Arlington area where we conducted a one-day operation with the North Texas Human Trafficking Task Force. As you can see, that was a very successful operation, and which actually tied to 2 licensed premise. The investigation is still ongoing, but one thing that we were able to glean is a huge amount of intelligence related to human trafficking and organized crime at those locations. The second case I want to highlight in October is a case that involved a cantina here in Houston. The case made headlines on Univision, and the most significant thing about this investigation was that we recovered 10 potential victims. There's several other victims that have come forward since this investigation, and the investigation is ongoing. Next slide, please. In November, one of the things that we started really focusing on is becoming more proactive, and we did a statewide undercover operation involving sexually oriented businesses that were notorious for underage dancers, and that operation was successful in that we recovered 8 potential victims, and 2 charges were filed on the managers of one of those establishments. And we're going to continue our proactive work, as we know that's the best way to uncover human trafficking, because the victims typically don't come forward, as we know, or they don't outcry to police. We also were involved with a drug trafficking investigation in the Austin area. While I obviously can't go into the details, based on the investigation to date, it could lead to a very substantial investigation related to drug trafficking and licensed premise. The last case I want to update in November, we conducted another cantina investigation that led to the cancellation of the permit. So our agents are doing great work out there despite COVID. Human trafficking is still occurring each and every day. December, next slide, please. So in December, this is another investigation involved in drug trafficking in the Austin area, where our agents are working diligently behind the scenes, and this investigation is also still ongoing. In San Antonio, we were notified of a labor trafficking case. One thing I want to make very clear is that labor trafficking is occurring it's just as prevalent as human trafficking. And what I can tell you is that Texas ranks number 2 in the number of labor trafficking cases, and the hospitality industry is number 3. So we want to look very, very closely, not just at sex trafficking, but at labor trafficking as well, because we know it's occurring. The last case involves what we call a buyer operation, where we're going after the demand side of human trafficking. The reason this is important is because the buyers know exactly where the locations are to purchase sex. So we can glean valuable intel that can lead us to establishments in our industry. Next slide, please. Most recent case that occurred in January, I'd like to point out that this case took no more than a month and a half to 2 months from start to finish. We were able to confirm that drug trafficking was occurring at this bar in College Station. Our agents did an outstanding job. This case actually made the local news. This investigation is still ongoing, as charges have been filed on the suspect, but we're still working diligently behind the scenes to uncover other entities involved. Next slide. And I'm pleased to announce, very pleased to announce, that we have now hired a victim services coordinator who will work very, very closely with SIU and enforcement as part of our recovery process. When we find victims of human trafficking, this is an extremely important component of the investigative process. And as you can see, we're very excited about moving forward with that. That's something that we greatly needed. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. If you have any questions, I'll definitely take them at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any questions for Major Wall?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to thank you for the update in the presentation. And I was wondering do we have the name of our victim services coordinator? Can you announce that?
We do. She actually starts February 1st, and her name is Rachel Alvarez.
Great. Look
She
forward
has.
to-
Yes, ma'am. She has at least 8 years of human trafficking experience in the NGO industry.
Great. Look forward to meeting her.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to ask this question is what kind of coordinated effort, if any, do we have? Because the intel side is really important and how we share that information with other law enforcement agencies. And so what's the synergy that we have between maybe the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Marshals? If you could just kind of touch base on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, a good number of our agents are assigned to task forces across the state. And we work very closely with local, state, and federal law enforcement, especially on the intel side. And as you know, Commissioner, we have our own criminal intelligence unit that's also tied into those groups as well. So intelligence is extremely important because it can lead us in the right direction, especially when we're conducting these proactive operations. And I can assure you that we collaborate very closely across all levels of law enforcement and government to get the most effective investigation possible.
Wonderful, because I love the fact that we're focusing not on just the victims, but the buyers as well, right? We've got to address the supply and the demand as well.
Yes, ma'am, and that's a big part of that is a big part of the equation. And so if you think about that for a second, who knows these locations better than the buyers? And if we're able to offer up ways of getting them to come forward with that information, what better intelligence, right? So we are involved in those type of operations. We're going to continue to do so. And I can tell you firsthand that it's led to some really outstanding investigations. You got to understand too, that these buyers have access to all these, websites and things like that. So it's something that's that we're definitely interested in.
Thank you.
Major Wall and their folks have been doing an absolutely great job. I think some of your questions will be answered in the next briefing by Dennis Beal. We reached out to Texas A&M and Sam Houston State and asked them to do a gap analysis for us on what we could do better and more effective with the taxpayer dollars to try to impact this. Historically, we created the SIU about 5 years ago, 2013, and we kind of came up with our own about how to attack human trafficking. No other alcohol beverage commission in the United States is as active at doing this as we are. So we're really trying to, Major Wall and the SIU folks are doing a great job, but we're constantly looking at ways that we can leverage and collaboratively engage other agencies in order to be more effective.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments before we move on?
This is great work. Thank you
Thank
for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Thank you, Commissioner Marino. The next agenda item is in continuation of the theme, human trafficking and exploitation, with Deputy Executive Director Colonel Beal. Colonel?
Chairman Lilly, Commissioners, hope everyone's okay today. What I'm going to talk to you about today is the gap analysis that we conducted and that we had conducted on the agency. As a result of the direction of the Texas legislature and the governor's office a little over a year ago, where they emphatically stated that human trafficking eradication was the state's #1 enforcement priority. TABC at that time, we huddled and got together and said, okay, what do we need to do to be able to answer the call to the legislature and the governor's office? So where are we on human trafficking and eradication? How are we organized? What are the gaps that we have in our agency in order to be able, and how do we need to fill those gaps so that we can fulfill the requirement of the legislature and the governor? So we initiated a study with Sam Houston State University and with Texas A&M University to look at the gap analysis that we conducted and to come back and give us results. The objective of that study was to identify methods and resources and assets to close those gaps that we identified. And the duration of the study was a little over 6 months long. It concentrated and identified on the current state at TABC as it pertains to human trafficking and eradication. The areas of inquiry were organized under the goals of prevention, protection, prosecution, partnerships, and enabling TABC. So with that being said, go to the next slide, please. What we did was we huddled, and for about a 7-month period, we went through a very detailed, formal gap analysis process, just like you do in DOD. We looked at initial capabilities decision matrix, and we developed that. And as you can see, those 10 items under the ICD, we developed every one of those. We looked at what our situational overview was and looked at all of those areas under there. That resulted in the creation of a mission needs statement. That mission needs statement for TABC came out and said, you need to be able to perform these 5 functions to be able to participate in human trafficking and eradication. And you see what those 5 are. That in turn resulted into a concept of operations. And we started our new operational requirements development process, our ConOps then. The outputs were as follows, as you see. And then we got down to G, which was, so we've done everything down to G, and G said conduct and outsource research. So that's what we did. We went to Sam Houston, we went to Texas A&M. We came up with 41 gaps that we identified within the agency. Next slide, please. Of those 41 gaps, we divided them up between Sam Houston and between Texas A&M equally. And the results that they came back with after their concerted research was as follows. These were the recommendations that they came back with. These are the things they recommended that the agency actually be able to do. And I'm not going to read you the slides, but I'll hit a few of the highlights. They wanted us to join and support the anti-human trafficking coalitions across Texas. They wanted us, the big takeaway was design and organize and train an anti-human trafficking unit within the agency, to embed analysts as liaisons, and to expand our CIU liaison and forensic capabilities. Next slide. They wanted us to develop a human trafficking and education command, which included our organic working groups, which was charged with transformation. We're in the process of doing that. They wanted us to acquire a dedicated training facility to support our training expansion and our curriculum into our new human trafficking course, which is going to augment our Agents Academy. And you can read the rest of the requirements rest of the recommendations that they came up with. So these were the recommendations that they came up with that they would like us to pursue now that we're currently not pursuing. Next slide. The following recommendations that they had were ones that we have already addressed, completed, or we already had underway when they came back with their results. They wanted us to adopt federally created programs and build standardizations and outreach. We do that. We're increasing our public awareness. We had been working on that. So these are the laundry list of things that they said, you need to do these things. We were actually doing some of those in some form or fashion. Next slide. And as you can see, this winds it up. They wanted us to have a victims advocacy personnel or a team that should be responsible for building a strong survivor information organization. You just heard Major Wall say we've hired a victims advocate. And so we are in the process of doing these. So this was a great research project, and it was great data that came back to us. I don't think any other agency has done this to this depth and to this extent and scope in the state to determine where they are in regards to human trafficking and what they need to work on and where they need to put forth their focus and their emphasis. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Colonel Beal, I want to congratulate you and your entire division, as well as General Nettles, for this breakthrough. And as he said, we are at the forefront of all alcoholic beverage commissions in the United States, and seeing that our role in combating human trafficking is significant and profound. And I know that everyone in the agency knows this, but those who are not, 3 of the 5 primary venues for human trafficking, hotels, bars, and restaurants, fall within our jurisdiction. And so it is incumbent upon us, and I firmly believe it's incumbent upon all ABCs throughout the United States to be at the forefront. And in fact, and indeed, we are doing more than just talking the talk through this study and through our continued dedication toward this eradication. We are walking the walk. And I applaud all of you for doing this. We have the largest human trafficking dedicated force of any law enforcement agency in the state of Texas. And so it's an important initiative, and I'm incredibly proud of the agency and your continuation in pushing forward and leaning forward to make a difference. And so thank you all for your involvement.
Right, sure.
I did have one quick clarification, and again, Colonel, thank you. This is such outstanding work. I was wondering, in our previous presentation, we had also talked about addressing labor trafficking. And so I'm assuming that a lot of the vernacular that we're using is interchangeable. So when you have your human trafficking, we're also focused on the labor trafficking as well as part of this gap analysis.
That's correct. Some of the conclusions that especially Sam Houston State came back with was specifically concentrated on those activities that we need to watch out for and that the agency should prepare itself for in regards to it. And that's why the overall study was called Human Trafficking and Exploitation. And it deals with not just sex trafficking, but also labor traffickings, because some of these people are just sold into compulsive labor, and we have the ability to identify those. The study came and identified quite a few areas of interest in regards to labor. So yes, ma'am, that was part of it.
Thank you.
That was a great question. Thank you very much. And thanks for that clarification. The next agenda item is the chaplains program. Director Salinas.
Sir, we're on 2.4.
Beg your pardon. Did I hop ahead here? Of course. The next agenda item, excuse me, my apologies, Director Black. It is the TABC TxDOT partnership. Very important. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, sir. I was worried there. Thought you forgot about me.
No, never.
Well, good morning, Chairman Lilly and commissioners, and thank you for providing me this opportunity to brief you on a new partnership with another state agency. Last month, TABC began a partnership with the Texas Department of Transportation to work together to save lives. Next slide, please. It is a true Texas tragedy. Unfortunately, Texans die on our streets and highways every day. It is a sad fact that we have a terrible streak going on in the Lone Star State. For more than 20 years, at least one person has been killed on our roads each and every day. 70,000 innocent lives have been lost because of these preventable crashes, and we all know we can do better. Next slide, please. We are teaming up with TxDOT to try to end the streak. Let's go at least one day without a death on our roads, and let's change the habits of our drivers. During the holidays, TABC developed a social media campaign to raise the awareness on how Texas can end this streak. Both agencies shared the post and laid out a wish list for a better 2021. Next slide. The pilot campaign was successful, reaching 170,000 Texans and increasing engagement on TABC's Facebook page by 31% year to year. And this is just the beginning. We're working with TxDOT to look for more opportunities to promote ending the streak. Next slide, please. We're also working with TxDOT to promote our TRACE program. As a reminder, TRACE stands for Target Responsibility for Alcohol-Connected Emergencies. If someone is seriously hurt in connection with an alcohol-related incident, TABC agents can assist law enforcement agencies in tracing the source of the alcohol. TxDOT has put up information on its crash website about TRACE. Every time a local law enforcement agency files an accident report, they must put it in on the crash site. So law enforcement across the state will be reminded they can turn to TABC for help on alcohol-related accidents. We believe these types of partnerships with TxDOT will lead to safer streets and fewer Texans dying on our roads. And I look forward to briefing you in the future as this partnership grows. And with that, I conclude the presentation and happy to answer any questions.
I've got a question. It seems to me, and I don't have any of the data behind this, but the texting has become a giant issue in this crashing, right? So I believe our focus is more on the alcohol side, but how much have we seen a giant increase in the last 20 years with texting and all the other technology that just distracts drivers? Is that's what driving this more so than alcohol, or is it 50-50? Do you have kind of a feel of what's primarily causing a lot of these accidents?
Commissioner Atkins, that is a great question. And yes, distracted driving, we've seen a huge increase in that. I don't know the actual, the different numbers, but what I'll do, I'll get with TxDOT, I'll get those numbers to you and I'll provide them to the commission. But you bring up a great point. Unfortunately, there's so many drivers out there that are texting on our roads, and we're seeing an increase in the amount of crashes because of that distracting driving. So yeah, we absolutely want to remind everyone out there that please, if you're going to be out on the roads, please put that cell phone down and just do not text and drive.
Well, it's unbelievable to me. I did not know that we've had a death every single day. So the goal to try to break that streak is certainly one that we hope we get to. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brian, is there an opportunity for us to do another wave of awareness with TxDOT? I know this was slated for the holidays, but do we have a time frame of doing something else with them in the near future?
Absolutely, we do. We have some things in the hopper right now. Excited that we hope to share those in the next few weeks. But yes, this is a long-term partnership that we're going to be doing with TxDOT. And I agree with you. We definitely want to have more campaigns like this because we do need to get the information out.
Yeah, I'd love to know a little bit ahead of time so we can share it with our sphere of influences online, and maybe have companies or other trade organizations that are involved with transportation to get it out to their members, and maybe we just try to do a bigger splash.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. We'll definitely do that. We'll look forward to sending it out to all the commissioners and giving you more runway to get ready for these. So thank you. That's a great idea.
Sure.
Director Black, thank you very much. I know all of us are passionate about ending this unfortunate streak. That is shocking to hear. I absolutely concur. Now, as I jumped ahead before, I will now jump back to the our new chaplaincy, or our enhanced chaplaincy program, and Director Salinas will now take the floor.
Good morning, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners. It's a great day to be a Texan. I am Orlando Salinas, and I'm the Director of the Training Division, also a retired Brigadier General. I am honored to be here before you today, and I'm super excited to discuss this new innovation called TABC Chaplaincy Program. I would like to start off by thanking General Nettles for his leadership in this innovation and his vision. I would also like to thank Scott McIntosh, who's the lead chaplain with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Division. This program serves as a shining example of how state agencies can collaborate and cooperate to produce good for an organization. The mission of this program is to minimize the effects of job-related stress and enhance the quality of life of our employees, which, as we all know, are our agency's most valuable resource, which is our people. The intent is to provide spiritual guidance and counseling to all members of both sworn and civilian within our agency. I'd also like to thank Major General Duke Bodish with the Texas Military Department, Texas State Guard, and I will introduce it a little later on, Colonel Tom Moeller, who will be our Chief of Chaplains. Next slide, please. As you can see in this slide, the chaplains are very well qualified for this. This supports the whole of agency wellness program, and of course allows us to provide guidance and counseling to TABC employees from requested quickly and locally. It's important to note that we launched this on the 22nd of December at about 1400. And immediately after that, there were a couple of calls to our chaplains, and we were able to deal with a couple of issues that happened within the agency. And Colonel Mueller will, of course, brief that. Let's go to the next slide, please. As you can see in this slide, the state chaplains from the Texas State Guard have a myriad and a plethora of resources because they're within their various communities. The intent of this program is to support and enhance the employee assistance program and not to supplant it. We have a chief of chaplains, Colonel Tom Mueller, who will participate in all training events, provides guidance to myself and to all the regional leadership team, and part of the command staff within their areas of responsibility. Next slide, please. As you can see in the next slide, that we have placed the chaplaincy program under the training division. All conversations between our chaplains and our employees are confidential and privileged. I will now introduce, and it's my honor to introduce Colonel Mueller, who is our Chief of Chaplains. Tom, take it away.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you today to address this new program that we have brought out. We approach the TABC program the same way that we approach it in the military. If you go to the next slide, please. We look at this as a ministry of presence, and our chaplains are located throughout the state in various regions. So we try and have these people aligned with the individuals that are in the various regions. Next slide, please. We've assigned lead chaplains for each region and have selected chaplains for the most part that have prior or current law enforcement experience. You can see also the on-call duty contact information. We can be reached either by phone or by email. We have 24-hour individuals that are monitoring this and will take calls and get us connected with the correct individual to respond to these items. We also have a weekly chapel service at 1100 each Sunday at All Faiths Chapel on Camp Mabry that can be attended either in person or you can join us virtually on Teams or Facebook Live. As General Salinas mentioned, we did immediately have interaction with the Arlington office with an issue that had come up there, and we jumped in with both feet, and we're happy to be able to lend assistance to a situation that occurred up there. With that being said, that concludes my comments, and I will yield the floor to General Salinas for any additional questions or comments.
Colonel Mueller, thank you. Excellent presentation. Commissioners, Chairman Lilly, we also, thanks to the Texas State Guard, we also have a Facebook online chaplaincy, and they provide chapel services, non-denominational, for all our employees. During our initial meeting, we shared all this information with all our employees and our directors. So I'm happy to report to you that the program is alive and well, and we continue to working with our Texas State Guard to do great things for our employees. Subject to your questions, that will then conclude my presentation.
Commissioners, any comments or questions?
So I'd just like to add to this, what wasn't raised in the Sam Houston State University gap analysis was extending and looking at our employee assistance program. As our agents get more into human trafficking, the things that they see can be disturbing. Bringing on the chaplaincy program and bringing it up to speed is our way of trying to fill that gap until we can determine other needs and reevaluate our EAP program. But I think it's a great opportunity for our folks. And I'm glad that we, through Director Salinas and the Texas State Guard, finally, we were able to get this up to speed and on the ground. So.
General Salinas and General Nettles, I wanted to also thank you for creating this collaboration with the Texas Military Department. As a guardsman myself, I know that this can only happen when you have collaboration, and it's a vital need. Chaplaincy in the Army and in the military in general is so essential because post-traumatic stress is not just a combat situation. It can happen in any stressful situation. And especially with the pressure that the agency's been under during this pandemic, having a robust chaplaincy and having those individuals available for our men and women throughout the agency is essential and important. And so I thank you both for pushing this through.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, any other comments?
I did. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just commenting on everything today, but everything is such wonderful information. I just want to dive in a little bit deeper. I'm just going to suggest, and this is just a suggestion, and I don't know if we can make it happen, but maybe with this extremely robust chaplain program that we're launching, and thank you, Colonel Moeller. I look forward to meeting you as well. Is there an opportunity maybe for us when we start our meetings and not only to do the Pledge of Allegiance, but maybe have a cycle in our chaplains and do a blessing or a prayer over our meetings? I know there's 39 chaplains I thought that was in the program, so it might be a good way for us to get a little bit more exposure to them as well as integrate what they're doing with our meeting and making sure that we're all kind of doing it from the right place. Just an idea.
Would you like me to address that?
Yes, Colonel Moeller, please.
We do this at the military base. We usually open every meeting with a word of prayer. I've also been asked a number of times to go to the Senate floor and open in prayer there. So I'd be happy to line up a sectarian prayer to do at the beginning of any of these types of meetings.
And as Tom said, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners, we'd be happy to support. General Nettles will follow your lead. And just a quick note on that is that our chaplain programs has helped and continues to help and will help our cadets during their academies. Thank you, sir. I'll defer to you.
And Colonel Moeller, thank you for putting on your Class A's. You look sharp. Thanks for being here. The next agenda item is back with Director Black on the agency report card. Director?
Well, good morning again, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners, and thank you for letting me provide you a second presentation today. This one will focus on an assessment of the agency's performance over the past year. Next slide, please. As you all know, it's crucial for an organization to take a look back to see if the team is meeting the goals and objectives that were set. We have put together a document titled Performance Measures for the 86 Legislative Session Priorities. By reviewing our performance, we can look at opportunities to improve and set a path forward for success. Next slide, please. In the Performance Measures document, the agency put together a report card for the past year looking at critical goals like rescuing human trafficking victims, our rollout of legislative mandates, providing assistance to businesses during the pandemic, and the technology transformation to make doing business with TABC easier and those working in the industry. Now, we will share our performance measures document and report card with the Commission, legislative members, Capitol staffers, stakeholders, and the public. Next slide. Some of the highlights include how the agency rescued or identified 150 victims of human trafficking and the creation of the Criminal Intelligence Unit that is leading to capturing more criminals who are trafficking Texans. Next slide. The report card also documents how the agency is streamlining the permitting process and removing red tape. We eliminated 14 permits and are on track to consolidate 25 more. The agency also made it easier to get products registered and into the marketplace. Next slide. Our technology transformation over the past year has been tremendous. We are using the resources the legislature provided us to develop an industry management system that will get Texans into business quicker and allowing existing businesses the ability to renew their permits with a click of a few buttons. After many years stuck in the technological dark ages, we are moving forward with a total transformation of the agency. Next slide. We also wanted to point out, while parts of the industry are suffering tremendously, like our bars and restaurants, other areas of the industry are expanding. There is growth in the volume of sales of alcohol in Texas. We see this in the increase of alcohol excise tax collection. It's important to note, because of the 2-year renewal cycle, we compare even years to even years and odd years to odd years. From fiscal year 2018 to 2020, we saw an 8% increase in collections. And if we look at the last 4 months of 2020 and compare that to the last 4 months of 2018, there's been a 10% increase. With a growing industry, TABC needs to make sure we have the resources to perform our critical oversight of the industry. Next slide, please. We're always looking for continuous improvement for agency operations, but right now we can say we're on the right path, and we will look for keeping those opportunities to help businesses flourish. Now here's a quick look at our year in review. Roll video, please.
The TABC stands with you, and working together, we can all help ensure our industry continues to play an important role in the future of Texas. I personally pray for good health for you and your family during these unprecedented times.
Unless you've been down to the border and you see the volume of coming across, or you see what's being confiscated, you don't truly understand the importance of this mission by TABC.
We have students from every college in the nation come to our beaches for spring break. The number one priority is we want to make sure everybody gets home safely.
The Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission stands with the alcoholic beverage industry during this incredibly difficult time.
Your safety and the safety of your family is of utmost importance.
It's nice to be able to support Texans that are struggling with coronavirus and do something that's truly great as a whiskey distillery.
We're here to protect the citizens of the state of Texas, but also to let them know we're here to help them.
The Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission was conducting what it calls Operation Safe Open.
We're happy to be open and happy to be healthy, and that's all we can ask for.
Undercover TABC agents are getting prepared to spot and end human trafficking.
It's imperative that this training be at the leading edge.
Welcome to the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission new website.
We redesigned our website to make it easier for anyone to do business with TABC at any time and any place.
We are so happy to give you your first look into Ames. It will completely change how you interact with TABC.
The alcoholic beverage industry is a vital part of the Texas economy. You provide jobs, you support Texans, and we're here to support you.
Well, 2020 was definitely a challenging year, and we're looking forward to working with businesses to make 2021 hopefully a much better year. And that concludes my presentation today, Chairman.
Director Black, thank you. That was outstanding. Well done. Commissioners, any comments or questions? All right. Director Black, thank you again. Having heard none, we will move to the next agenda item, which is our COVID-19 vaccine for employees update. Director Fletcher, please.
Good morning, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners. I'm Amanda Fletcher, and I serve as the Director of Human Resources for TABC. Today, I'll be giving information about the COVID-19 vaccine for employees. Next slide, please. There's still a great deal of uncertainty regarding the impact to our isolation and return to work protocols for employees as it relates to the new COVID-19 vaccines that have been granted emergency use authorization by the FDA. HR will continue to monitor the CDC and Texas Department of State Health Services guidance and coordinate with other agencies like the Governor's Office, Department of Emergency Management, and Department of Public Safety to ensure we're in line with the best practices. As I'm sure you're aware, DSHS has created an expert vaccine allocation panel to make recommendations on vaccine allocation decisions, including identifying groups that should be vaccinated first to provide the most protection to vulnerable populations and critical state resources. Frontline healthcare workers and residents at long-term care facilities, called Phase 1A, plus employees over 60, or plus people over 65 or with a chronic medical condition that puts them at increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19, called Phase 1B, are currently eligible to receive the vaccine. Because of the limited supply of vaccines, we're still waiting to see where law enforcement and other frontline state employees fall in the allocation prioritization. We're in communication with our other state agencies and providers to see when and if we can offer vaccine clinics for our employees. All health plans offered through the state employees retirement system cover COVID-19 vaccinations at 100%. This means that any employees participating in the state health plan should not have to pay anything out of pocket to be vaccinated once it's available to them. Our leadership is currently looking into options to give employees an incentive to get this vaccine. At this point, COVID-19 vaccines are voluntary and our temporary telework policy will remain in place. Our offices will continue to be open to the public by appointment only. Once our frontline employees, especially our certified peace officers and employees at the ports of entry, are given the opportunity to get the vaccine, we hope to lessen the risk of exposure to our employees, industry, and the public in our interactions. This is a fluid situation we're closely monitoring and continuously reevaluating our practices. That concludes my presentation. Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Director Fletcher, thank you very much for that update.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is public comment. And we have received no comments, so we will proceed to the next agenda item. Next agenda item is consideration and potential action on withdrawal of proposal of amended rule 33.5, food and beverage certification. Ms. Horton.
Good morning, Chairman Lilly and Commissioners. I'm Shana Horton and I serve as the TABC's rules attorney. As you know, the agency continues to work to support Texas businesses struggling due to COVID-19. To that end, at your December 15th meeting, this commission voted to extend emergency rule changes to the requirements for food and beverage certificates. Due to the expiration of the extension, which will occur in mid-February, staff recommended publication of the amended rule under the standard non-emergency rulemaking procedure, which would make the amendments permanent, though subject to amendment later, of course. Subsequent to your December 15th meeting, staff reviewed options for continuing to support our industry members using the food and beverage certificates under an emergency rule. And we have determined that there are other options to do so that would not require a permanent rule change, but would still enable those folks to continue operation under the current framework through the pandemic. For that reason, we now recommend that you vote to withdraw the proposed amendments to Rule 33.5 from consideration.
Do we have any questions from the commission? Having heard none, I move to approve withdrawal of proposal of amended Rule 33.5, food and beverage certification as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
I believe that was Commissioner Atkins. Thank you, sir. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Thank you. Next agenda item is consideration and potential action on adoption of new Chapter 33, Subchapter B, as in Bravo, fees and payments. Ms. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At your last commission meeting, regular commission meeting, you voted to propose these changes to Subchapter B. They are almost entirely just reorganizational. No comments were received on the rule package, and it is now before you for your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of new Chapter 33, Subchapter B, Fees and Payments, as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our vote is recorded. And Commissioner Mack, was that your second?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. The next agenda item is consideration of potential action on adoption of amended Rule 45.103 on premises promotions. Ms. Horton.
Thank you. This particular rule package that you voted to propose in November, we have received no comments, public comments on. It would amend 45.103 to allow tickets to certain charity events to include more than 2 alcoholic beverages in the price of a ticket. Would also allow public entertainment facilities like sports arenas to sell special tickets or passes that would include more than 2 alcoholic beverages. So there's a limited group of tickets and passes that would qualify. It would also reinforce the legal duty of the seller and server of alcoholic beverages to refuse to serve an intoxicated or underage individual. As I said, no formal public comments were received, and this is now before you for your decision on adoption.
Thank you. Any questions? Having heard none, I move to approve adoption of amended 45.103 on premises promotions as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Moreno, thank you. We have a second. We'll now vote.
A lot of work for.
All have voted.
Excellent. Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. The next agenda item is consideration potential action on publication of proposed amended Rule 33.3, process to apply for license or permit. Ms. Horton.
Yes, this rule proposal before you is to bring in line our requirements for filing renewal applications for permits in line with licenses and private clubs, in that they would need to be filed, renewal applications would need to be filed within 30 days prior to the renewal. That would just make it less confusing for people to have everything on the same timeline. There's no reason to have different rules. So we thought at this time, since we're working so much on Chapter 33, that we would go ahead and make this change for consistency. This rule is now before you for your consideration on proposal.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Having heard none, I move to approve publication of proposed amended Rule 33.3, process to apply for license or permit as recommended by staff. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatwright. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Motion carries. The next agenda item is consideration potential action on publication of new Rule 33.16, application rules applicable to 2021 technology transition. Ms. Horton.
As you all know, on September 1st, 2021, the agency is making 3 big transitions precipitated by legislative action during the last legislative session. from current fees to new fees, from the current set of licenses and permits to a more streamlined set, and from an outdated application processing system to a more efficient one, AIMS. We determined that a rule is necessary to ensure an orderly transition and transparent, consistent commission action on applications filed around the time of that transition. Proposed Rule 33.16 would be a rule of limited applicability that would expire on November 1st, 2021, after the bulk of the transition has occurred. It specifies when applications for original and renewal licenses and permits must be filed, including a 1-month moratorium on applications for original licenses and permits for the month of August 2021. This is necessary because our legacy system, we want to transition out of that as quickly as possible. We won't have a lot of support for it after September 1st, 2021. And so placing a moratorium for August ensures that we don't get a big slug of last minute original license and permit applications that then have to go through the AIM system, through the legacy system, and keep that online for longer than we want. It doesn't prohibit anyone from filing in July though. So it's just going to require a little bit more planning on the part of people who have original permit and license applications they'd like to file this summer. We don't anticipate that it will necessarily decrease the number of applications that we have. It will just get them in a little bit earlier than they might have otherwise been submitted. This rule also lays out whether current fees or fees that are effective on September 1st, 2021 will apply to the various categories of applications based upon the date the application is complete, including payment of all fees. As I said, the rule expires by its own terms on November 1st, 2021, when it's no longer necessary to complete the transition. This rule, subject to your questions, is now before you for your decision on proposal.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Having heard none, if I may have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. We have a second. We will now vote.
All have voted.
Our votes have been recorded. The motion is approved. Next item is executive session. The commission will now go into a brief executive session under Government Code 551.074 and 551.071. The regular open session of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission will be in recess. The time is now 11:38 p.m. or a.m. rather, Tuesday, January 26, 2021. The Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission has concluded its executive session and is now in regular open session. The date is Tuesday, January 26, 2021, and the time is 11:50 a.m. The next item is potential actions on items discussed in the executive session, and no action will be taken. Next is the announcement of the next meeting date. The next regular scheduled commission meeting date is planned for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. Commissioners, do you have a problem with that date? Okay, thank you. Having heard none, the commission is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. Thank you all for your time. Hopefully more progress will be made as we move into March and into the spring. Certainly hope so. The next is adjournment. The time is now 11:51 a.m. and we are adjourned. Stay safe, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.